So now let me go ahead and scoot down. So today, like I mentioned, it's going to be mostly terms, which we already covered, and let's look at the biggest idea. So since we are going to be talking about a graph, let's go ahead and put, what it looks like. So what does it look like? Okay. And it's one shape, but it's going to be like two different scenarios. So for example, here's the first scenario. Now, because we are talking about a graph, let me scoot up. Let me draw a graph. So something like this. So this is just my x and y axis. So here's x, here's y. And then a parabola, here's just a general one. The first scenario, it looks something like this. Now remember the arrows, because it technically goes off to infinity both ways, but it's kind of like this sort of U shape. So it goes like this way and that way, but it extends to both ways over here. So this type of parabola is called a positive one. Positive. And think about it like the shape, it's facing up. I'll draw like a little arrow here. So it doesn't matter like if it goes to the left or if it goes to the right, it's always pointing up both directions, okay? So it's called a positive because it's going up. And then the way I remember this, just keep in mind, it's kind of like, if you think about this shape, it's kind of like a smiley face. You know, as you draw a smiley, you go this sort of shape, which is exactly what you have here. Now, I drew the parabola right here, but it doesn't mean it has to be like this specific one. It could be, you don't have to copy this down, but just to show you, it could be something over here like this, or it could be something maybe like way down here too, over here, etc. The biggest idea, it doesn't matter where it is, it just has this like smiley face over here. And it could even be something like really, really, really steep, something like this. It doesn't have to expand, or it could be like really huge, but that's the idea. It's just like this smiley face, if you will. It's this U shape. Okay, so something to go with it. So we have the general idea. Let me put this in a thought bubble. So it's a smiley face, it's positive, but as we're going to be talking about like we did before with like the equations, let's actually give this an equation. And you've actually seen this before. So here's the equation. And you'll notice this looks very familiar. Now again, because we're talking about a graph, we're going to be using y equals whatever form we're talking about. So now we're moving back to y equals. But then this part you should be able to remember. So it's a quadratic. Remember, I have an x squared term. But let's see if you remember this. It's ax squared plus bx plus c. All right, hopefully you remember this from when we were factoring and also the quadratic formula. Okay, so that's the general form. I'll just make a little note here, very important, where a is positive. So just keep in mind this equation, the very first number, it has to be positive. This a has to be positive. So not 0 is not positive, but like 1, 2, 3, 4, or like 1.5, it just has to be positive. So I'm gonna go ahead and box this. So that's the equation for a positive parabola. It's still ax squared plus bx plus c. The only condition is that a has to be positive.